America's war on drugs. Do people even believe in it anymore? The U.S.'s war on drugs is probably got to be one of America's longest failures and most hypocritical, cynical projects it's done.
President Donald Trump has recently reminded us again why the war on drugs is so laughable and hypocritical with his decision to pardon the ex president of Honduras, a convicted drug trafficker, Juan Orlando Hernandez. He has pardoned him and set him free from jail. While at the same time, Donald Trump is accusing the leaders of both Venezuela and Colombia that they're drug traffickers and that they need to be taken out of office. It's honestly hilarious how Donald Trump is accusing Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela of being this huge drug trafficker, and also Colombia's president Gustavo Petro, and making this loud noise about it, and then pardoning a convicted drug trafficker. And many Republicans are finding a very difficult time trying to defend this latest action by Trump, because they can't even try to find a way to spin positively pardoning Juan Orlando Hernandez and setting him free from prison. When Juan Orlando Hernandez was president of Honduras from 2014 to 2022, the United States government actually closely supported him. A lot of people in Washington, D.C. supported him. The Obama administration supported him. Trump's first administration, Trump and his team supported him. And Joe Biden, in his first year in office, also was supporting Juan Orlando Hernandez. And at the same time, the U.S. Justice Department and officials, investigators, had been seen as far back as 2004 that Hernandez and his family had been involved in drug trafficking and cocaine smuggling for years.
So I will be curious to see if Donald Trump does end up also pardoning Juan Orlando Hernandez's younger brother, Tony Hernandez, who is serving a life sentence in the United States for drug trafficking crimes. He was arrested in Florida in 2018, caught red handed bringing drugs into the United States to Florida, and got caught and arrested, and he ended up going to jail for life in prison. And I'm pretty sure Juan Orlando Hernandez doesn't want to see his little brother stay in life in prison, and will probably be asking Trump to let him go free too.
There are many similarities between Nicolas Maduro and Juan Orlando Hernandez because both of them have been repressive authoritarian leaders and stolen elections. Nicolas Maduro has stolen elections. Juan Orlando Hernandez in 2017, he changed the constitution of Honduras to run for an illegal second term, and then he rigged the election. And then when people in Honduras protested, he used brutal repressive force with the military police to kill at least 23 protesters in November and December 2017. Both Juan Orlando Hernandez and Nicolas Maduro have been repressive, authoritarian thugs. And both have been involved in drug trafficking. The difference is Hernandez was a right-wing conservative leader and allies with the United States government, friendly with the United States military, since the United States has a military air base in Honduras, the Soto Cano Air Base. The United States has been there in Honduras since 1983. But on the other hand, Nicolas Maduro, socialist, and he's allies with America's enemies, such as Russia, China, and Iran, and Cuba. And so the United States treated and viewed them differently.
As we talk about the United States support for Juan Orlando Hernandez of Honduras and authoritarian dictators involved in drug trafficking, it's important to look at the legacy, the history of the United States government while proclaiming it's fighting a war on drugs, and at the same time has worked with other dictators in the past in Latin America and globally who've been involved in drug trafficking. And times the United States government works with drug trafficking groups when they're politically useful for intelligence, spying, financial purposes, and so forth. In some examples of dictators in Latin America who were involved in the drug trade that the U.S. government was allied with include in Paraguay a dictator named General Alfredo Stroessner, who ruled Paraguay from 1954 until 1989. And he and his dictatorship was very involved in working with smuggling in South America, in their part of South America, working with from marijuana to cocaine smuggling. Also, in Honduras in the past, there's a dictator named General Policarpo Paz Garcia, who came to power through what was called a cocaine coup in 1978. His coup was financed by the biggest drug smuggler at the time, named Juan Mata Balestros. And General Garcia ruled from 1978 to 1982. He was a graduate of the U.S. Army's School of the Americas program and was on the payroll of drug traffickers. And then the most infamous example is General Manuel Antonio Noriega of Panama, who was the dictator from 1983 until 1989. And he was a longtime ally of the United States. The U.S. also trained him in the School of the Americas program. He was a longtime ally of the CIA and was for a long time also working with Colombian drug cartels and allowing Panama to be used as a drug trafficking hub throughout the 1970s and 80s. And eventually the United States turned on him when he started becoming more defiant towards them. And the United States was publicly embarrassed of being allied with them. So they ended up invading Panama in 1989 and overthrowing him and arresting him and putting him on trial in the United States for drug trafficking. And the U.S. did that recently with Hernandez when he was no longer useful when he left office in 2022. The United States decided to indict him as a drug trafficker, demand he be extradited to the United States. The U.S. put him on trial. An American jury ended up convicting him, and he was sentenced to 45 years in prison. So it was kind of surprising to see. Then he ends up getting set free from it because not even Noriega got a pardon from the U.S. government. So, yeah, this is just a shocking extra level of corruption and hypocrisy in our war on drugs. So, in conclusion, what I want to say is obviously the war on drugs over and over again is a lie. It's a joke. When it was set up in 1971 by President Richard Nixon, it was really just another way for the U.S. government to expand and use control on the American people, arresting people for drug-related offenses, but in reality, at the time, Vietnam War protesters were the main targets of arrests. And to this day, the war on drugs is really used for, incarcerating people. And at the same time, the real people at the top involved in it, they never get punished. And the appetite for narcotics in the United States just never goes down. So as long as there's supply and demand, it's just such a huge big money making industry, and it's sad and horrible, but it is such a huge money making industry. It just there's no way to stop it. There's no way to put a stop to money laundering with banks because they're not going to refuse money. And the United States government has over and over again, in addition to Latin America, and like in Vietnam War as well as Afghanistan, worked with drug trafficking people who were involved in opium and heroin production. And the war on drugs, it's a sham. The last thing I want to bring up is, regarding Honduras, is the United States still does have a military air base in Honduras called the Soto Cano Air Base, and I've made a video about it in the past, which has gotten many views. And since 1983, the United States military has had a regular presence in Honduras, and one of their missions is counter narcotics. And yet, the drug trafficking situation in Honduras today isn't any better than it was in the 1980s. It hasn't stopped, it has not gotten better. The United States military trains the police and military of Honduras to supposedly fight drugs, and over again, the police and military leadership of Honduras are involved in drug trafficking, and most of the politicians, including the former president, Juan Orlando Hernandez. And it just goes kind of like with Panama, when the United States used to own the Panama Canal and have a bunch of military bases in Panama from 1917 to 1999. Drug trafficking was rampant right there, going on with the U.S. soldiers in the middle of it. So Panama and Honduras are just two examples of, you could have American military troops in that country, and the cocaine smuggling, the drug trafficking will still do very well, and it doesn't make a difference. And that's because a lot of people are on the take, and sadly, for some Americans to hear, yes, some people, even the U.S. military, are on the take with the drug business.